With Stickbots being as recent as they are, the whole timeline kind of looks like this. So Stickbots missed a lot in terms of internet history. And they also missed a lot of heights of social media platforms, or not really social media platforms because that's not really what you would refer to them back then, but I don't know, something like Facebook's true height or MySpace or something. And trust me, I've looked on MySpace, there's no Stickbot content anymore. But a lot of this stuff, mainly MySpace, is pretty dead, and not many people really use it anymore. Well, I don't like to say dead because I believe that as long as there's one person left, the community is still sort of alive, I guess. I don't know, we need a new term for it. One of the things that a lot of people go to when they talk about dead social media platforms is Tumblr. With Tumblr being mainly based off of blogs and stuff, you can kind of see why there'd be a lot of Stickbot content on it, with something like DeviantArt surprisingly not having that much, or at least not having a lot of recent stuff. But Tumblr is still actually a pretty active social media platform compared to what a lot of people say. And while I'm sure MySpace has that too, Tumblr is a lot more active, and I think has a lot more of a community in a way. Anyway, I thought it'd be fun to look at how Stickbot and Tumblr are tied together, so here. The first post from what I've been able to find on Stickbot Tumblr is from Sweet Spot Blog. The post was made on May 29, 2015 at 12:14 p.m. and it reads as follows. Layovers are no problem for Stickbot, Stickbot, layover, travels, at Salt Lake City International Airport. Now, it's pretty easy to dissect what's happening. That there's a layover at the airport at Salt Lake City International Airport. But shortly after this, I would assume, a repost from an Instagram post was posted featuring the rare blue translucent Stickbot eating pizza. And if we look at the post, they're at the Portland International Airport. You know, I might be misremembering something, but I'm pretty sure Stickbot has some tie to Portland.
Tonight we find some fun at the Portland-based toy company called Zing.
So, with other digging, it basically seems like that this person used to work at Zing, or maybe still works, but I'm gonna say used to work. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The first post on Tumblr was made by a Stickbot employee. Not only that, but it was made like a couple months before the first YouTube video on Stickbot's channel was. So I mean, that's pretty cool. I think that this is a good first post. I'd say it gets a 10 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10. I don't know. But between the years of 2015 and 2017, not much stuff really happened. It was mainly just reposts. However, a lot of stuff is probably hidden on people's profiles that I'm not just seeing, so maybe that's another video. To give an example, this is a repost from Vine. There are a lot of reposts from Stickbot's Vine. This is for Labor Day sale, which is really cool to have a link to it. However, with Vine being preserved from Vine, a lot of Stickbot stuff is preserved. Meaning that while this is handy, it's not exactly like crazy. But in 2017, what I consider is the first Tumblr, I don't know the proper Tumblrology, made a post. And this guy we will see quite frequently, and I'd say that he is the kids filming club of Tumblr, if you will. Phantom Stuff Portal appears to be the first artist, I guess you could say in many ways. The first consistently posting person on these Tumblr forums, if you will. Because a lot of people that just repost something and that was kind of it. Sometimes we get the person to repost twice from Instagram, but most of the time they're more so Instagram users than really Tumblr users, if that makes sense. Phantom shows us also that without Off the Grid, this community would have probably not really existed that much. Off the Grid is the major force behind the Stickbot Tumblr, and we will see that as we continue. So here's the post. There's probably older art on here, but this is the one that I found. Their art is really good, and often considered some of the best off-the-grid fan art to ever exist so far. And yeah, this is really cool. I like to see, it's like a more kind of organic approach, but it still has that Stickbot look, which is really fun. I like how there's like these Iron Man blasters on the hands, which kind of maybe work as suction cups, which is a cool interpretation of it. It's also interesting to see the distinction between translucent and transparent, which I may use for the future. Overall, I really like this art style, and I'm glad we'll be seeing more of it in the future. So, let's read the post. Stickbot variants, roughly based off of the actual toys. No, but seriously, the Stickbot content is kinda good, and to be honest, I'm trash. For Off the Grid, it's because shit, man, that's darker than a lot of other children's stuff I've read in books. To be honest, I picture them being a bit more than just, little basic stickmen. They're portrayed as robots more so heavily, like more so in Off the Grid. So why not draw them as such? These are all roughly based off of Stickbot colors, plus examples from off-the-grid characters. So yeah, though sometimes shit can be switched with a solid one, which I'm pretty sure he's translucent in early episodes, I could be wrong. Overall, in this, they're basically just saying that These are more so based off of the style is more so like a robot than a stickman, which I really like, and I think that's a cool interpretation. Throughout 2017, we get a bunch of really cool pieces of art from fandom, and eventually in 2018, they got their hands on some stickbots, which is also very cool. At this time, fandom was pretty much the only real sort of sticktuber. That was until Abby the Sloth Witch came along in 2017, posting about getting a new stickbot, who they named Freddy. Throughout the next day, we would see multiple posts, basically depicting a story, along with a bunch of posts saying lore about each character and telling their roles, basically. While this did not go on for a while, it's really cool to see a series like this interpreted with stickbots, like a kind of blog, if you will. And maybe one day I'll make a video on this. Fandom eventually seemed to be the main person posting in 2017, with occasional people saying hello once or twice or posting a video, but it was mainly fandom. Eventually, they were talking about working on a series called Greater Than the Grid. It would be a fan comic that was sort of a spin-off, but still took place in the Off the Grid universe. It looks really cool, and it's a shame I can't find any info on it. After talking to fandom, it seems like some of the series released, however, not the full thing, and it never was finished. Now, for the past couple of years, I always wanted to know what was the first Stikbot Discord server. It was probably fan-made back in like 2016 by a random kid, but I always wanted to know. And as of now, it seems like fandom may have created the first one. While the link is long dead and the server may have been deleted, here it is. It seems like the Greater Than the Grid Discord server was the first Stikbot server, and it also seems to have been focused on Off the Grid, which would have been really cool to see. It seems like that it never really took off, however, after talking to fandom, which really sucks because this could have opened up all this new stuff for the Stikbot community. However, Discord was pretty unknown back then. I remember my friend telling me about it and I thought it was like Omegle. Back on Tumblr, however, not much was happening in the community. Weirdly enough, though, there were a couple reviews of pirate sets, like the pirate movie set on Tumblr, which is interesting. Fandom's art we'd also see to kind of have this cool sketch style eventually, which I really like. And also there were some origins of some funny inside jokes in the Stikbot community. But besides that, we'd get to see one of the first actual, like, animations, person who consistently made animations on Tumblr, which is really cool to see. However, this only lasted like 2 months, including like I think a 1 month break. So, we have a new record, but yeah. So in case anyone asks at Stikbot Trivia, the first true Stikbot Tumblr stick Tumblr animation guy was Ting Motion blog, but it's just Ting Motion. While throughout Stikbot Tumblr's life, we would mainly see reposts from Instagram and stuff. This was mainly the height of it, where the majority of stuff was from Instagram. We would eventually start to see more people like Stikbot Blog 1 posting more stuff more consistently, with more Stikbot animations coming out. However, eventually, throughout 2018 and 2019, especially 2019, we mainly just got a lot of shitposts, similar to DeviantArt's current state right now, but yeah. Besides lots of cool art from fandom, this was the main thing to happen. In a sort of like Q&A thing, KittyPop2003 basically asked if they had watched Clickbot Galaxy Defenders and if they ship any of the characters in Off the Grid. And in response, fandom said that basically after the Off the Grid finale, they pretty much stopped watching Stikbot because it was mainly geared at sort of a younger audience, and they do ship some of the characters. Kitty Pop would also draw their own stuff, sort of having that roboticness of fandom's art, but also a more humanoid style. Around this time, Off the Grid Nightmares would drop, like the trailer for it, so which got a lot of people excited but kind of skeptical. So, yeah. Besides fandom, Scarily Common was also one of the main people nowadays who post stuff. Scarily Common and fandom are pretty much the only two people. But, I mean, the duo. I tried to get in contact with Scarily Common, but I wasn't able to, sadly. But if you're seeing this video, I'd love to hear your side of the story. Now, that's kind of where our story ends for Stikbot Tumblr. However, except for the reason why I made this whole video. So, let's get on to that. Similar to when Chelsea left the community, giving some of his ideas to people, which is the origin of Stikbot Oddities, the Stikbot Iceberg, all that stuff. When Apocalypse Films left the community, he gave some of his ideas to a bunch of creators, and one of them was the Stikbot documentary. And guess who got it? While this is still in production and will probably be in production for like another 5 years, yeah, one of the things that was a major part of this documentary would be interviews. A lot of these interviews, which I can't really talk about because I don't want to leak it, but there was a lot of really cool stuff. One of them, which I got after he left the project, was an interview with Fandom. So, yeah. However, when looking at how long the documentary would be and all this stuff, I'm gonna have to cut the Tumblr interview, sadly. So I thought I should make a video on Tumblr, and I could just kind of dedicate a whole thing to it rather than kind of skimming it over in a documentary. So without further ado, here's an interview I did with Fandom about a year ago. How did you get into Stikbot and Off the Grid?
I think it was pretty random. Off the Grid was my first glimpse of Stikbot, if I recall correctly, and it caught my eye. It reminded me of the old days of YouTube where stop motion was all the rage. And the plot line. I've been looking for a post-apocalyptic of its nature for a while. They don't make post-apocs like they used to. Off the Grid had me hooked on Stikbot very swiftly.
How did you get into art?
I was what many will call a natural-born artist. Though these don't exist, anyone can learn to create art at any age. From my childhood, I was taught to put crayons onto paper and not up my nose. Being mentally ill, art has become an outlet and a way to keep my hands busy. Years upon years of practice got me to where I am now.
What are your thoughts on the current state of Stikbot and Stikbot Tumblr?
I'm not terribly active in the Stikbot Tumblr. I don't think we have a big community here. It'd be nice to see more of us. Maybe it'd get me back into it faster. As for Stikbot the company, I think a turn was taken when Off the Grid ended. Off the Grid was very unlike their other, more family-friendly series, being one of its only darker, more mature productions, and that really attracted people like me who wanted to make that kind of content. After the release of Stikbot Monsters line, I heard less and less of Stikbot as time went on. Maybe it was my fluctuating interest in things, though.
How did you get your style?
My style has been pretty consistent since I was a kid. My biggest inspiration was a good friend of mine, Phasa Creations here on Tumblr, who I really looked up to when I was starting my art. The online culture at the time also really shaped my art. I was a member of the scene aesthetic movement, popular on art and forum sites, and I had a unique art style that I still come back to this day.
Do you own any Stikbots?
I own 6 or 7. My primary 2 and my first 2 are even OCs of mine. Sorry if I pronounced this wrong. Katagelophobia, or Katagel, and Equinox are those 2, being Off the Grid OCs. I made a comic for them a little while before I lost the energy to continue the comic.
What do you think of Off the Grid Nightmares?
I haven't watched Off the Grid Nightmares yet. I really need to. I hope it's as good as the original.
What can we expect with your art in the future?
Right now, I'm not terribly invested in Off the Grid or Stikbot. I'll probably revisit it once I start watching Off the Grid Nightmares. So for now, not a lot of my art is Stikbot related. There might be some in the future though.
Alright, that's the interview. Thank you Fandom and LEGO Stikbot for doing that. That was very interesting and epic. I think Stikbot Tumblr is something that's pretty underrated. Like, DeviantArt, it's kind of been forgotten, and, MySpace had never even existed, but, I feel like Tumblr, it still kind of has a chance, maybe. I don't know. It would be cool to see Stikbot stuff in different, mediums, if stories, for a couple of years, I've been kind of trying to search for, an Instagram account or something that posts, hey, my Stikbot's out on a walk or something, and I see those occasionally, but I never have seen one that has a cohesive story, which I feel like Tumblr did get right for a while, but it never really lasted. But Tumblr would have been perfect because it's like a blogging site. Anyway, I think that Tumblr still has a lot of potential for these guys. But yeah, if you are interested, then you should post on there and try to get the community to be more active. Maybe we'll have a Discord server just for Stikbot Tumblr. Who knows? But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next one. Bye.